Nathan Cole's Tuesday morning started the same way every morning started, with small fingers poking his cheek at 6:15 and a whispered voice saying, "Daddy, Daddy, the sun is awake." He opened one eye. His 7-year-old daughter Mia stood beside his bed, already dressed in her school uniform, hair exploding in 17 different directions like it had gotten into a fight with the pillow and lost. "The sun doesn't sleep, baby girl." "Then why does it go away at night?" Nathan considered this with the seriousness it deserved. Even half asleep, he knew that Mia's questions were never really about what they seemed to be about. They were tests, experiments, ways of figuring out how the world worked by watching how her father responded. "Maybe it's visiting kids on the other side of the world," he said, "making sure everyone gets a turn." Mia's face lit up with that particular joy children have when they discover something that makes sense. "I never thought of that." She tugged his arm with surprising strength for someone who weighed 43 pounds. "Come on, I need help with my hair. It's doing the thing again." "The bird's nest thing?" "The bird's nest thing." Nathan swung his legs out of bed and followed her to the bathroom. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that required strategic positioning to open the refrigerator door. But the morning light came through the window just right, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. He'd learned over the past 4 years that the size of a home mattered far less than what happened inside it. 20 minutes later, Nathan had managed something that looked approximately like a braid. He wasn't sure Sarah would have approved. His wife had possessed some kind of magical ability with hair, could twist it into elaborate configurations that seemed to defy gravity and common sense. But Mia seemed satisfied, and that was the only metric that mattered. "It's a little bumpy," Mia observed, examining herself in the mirror. "Bumpy means it has character." "You say that about everything." "Because everything worth keeping has character." They moved to the small kitchen table for breakfast, cereal for Mia, coffee, and toast for Nathan. The morning ritual had become sacred over the years, a fixed point in days that could otherwise blur together. No phones, no television, no distractions. Just the two of them, talking about whatever crossed Mia's endlessly curious mind. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "Tommy Peterson said his dad drives a car that costs $100,000. Nathan took a slow bite of toast, chewing carefully. He knew where this was going. He'd known it was coming for months. The questions about why they lived the way they lived, when Mia was old enough to notice that they didn't have to. "Did he?" "He said our car is old and ugly. He said only poor people drive cars like ours." "Our car is old," Nathan agreed, keeping his voice neutral. "I don't know about ugly. I think it has character." Mia's brow furrowed. "There's that word again. Character means it's been places, done things, has stories to tell." He smiled at her across the table. "Like how your stuffed elephant is missing an ear but you love him anyway, because the missing ear is proof of all the adventures you've had together." Mia considered this with the intensity she brought to everything, her mother's intensity, that fierce focus that could make the world feel like it was holding its breath. "Mr. Flopsy lost his ear in a battle against the vacuum cleaner. He's a war hero." "Exactly. Our car is a hero too. It's taken us to the beach and the mountains, and Grandma's house 100 times. Every scratch and dent is a story. That's worth more than being new and shiny." Mia nodded slowly, processing. Then she looked up at him with those eyes, Sarah's eyes, brown and bottomless, and asked the question he'd been dreading. "But Daddy, if you could get us a nicer car, would you?" Nathan set down his toast. There it was. The question that had been forming in her mind for weeks, maybe months, as she noticed the gap between their life and the lives of her classmates at Riverside Elementary. As she started to understand that something about their situation didn't quite add up. "Mia, Can I tell you something important? She nodded, sensing the shift in his tone. There are two kinds of rich. There's money rich, having lots of things, expensive cars, big houses, all the stuff you can buy. And there's life rich, having people who love you, doing work that matters, waking up happy every morning. The second kind is harder to get and easier to lose. I never want us to forget which one matters more. Mia's brow furrowed again. But can't you have both? Nathan smiled. His daughter was too smart for simple answers. She had been, since she was 3 years old, asking questions that made grown adults pause and reconsider their assumptions. You can, but it takes practice. It's easy to get so focused on money rich that you forget about life rich. And right now, I'm practicing, making sure we never forget what matters most. He reached across the table and tapped her nose. You. That's what matters most. She grinned, showing the gap where her front tooth had been. I know. Good. Now finish your cereal. We're going to be late. The drop-off line at Riverside Elementary was a parade of wealth that Nathan had grown accustomed to observing without participating. BMWs and Mercedes and the occasional Porsche SUV glided through the loop, depositing children in pressed uniforms before heading off to law firms and tech companies and investment banks. Nathan's 2007 Camry fit into this procession like a dandelion in a rose garden. The paint was faded, the bumper slightly dented from an incident in a parking garage 3 years ago, and the transmission had started slipping 2 weeks ago, a grinding hesitation when shifting from first to second that made him hold his breath every time. He'd been putting off dealing with it. But this morning, when the car had shuddered hard enough to make Mia grab the door handle with both hands, her eyes going wide with alarm, he'd made a decision. Today, he would buy a new car. He pulled into the drop-off zone and put the Camry in park. The engine rattled slightly, like an old man catching his breath after climbing stairs. Okay, baby girl. Grandma's picking you up today, remember? Mia unbuckled her seatbelt, but didn't move. She was watching him with that perceptive gaze that always made him feel like she could see straight through to his thoughts. Because of your errand? Because of my errand. What kind of errand? The kind where Daddy looks at some new cars. Her eyes went wide, and for a moment she looked so much like Sarah that Nathan's chest ached. New cars? Like Tommy's dad? Maybe. We'll see. He reached over and adjusted the collar of her uniform, which had gone crooked during the drive. I want you to have something safe, something that doesn't shudder when it's supposed to shift, something that will keep you protected no matter what happens. Mia was quiet for a moment, processing this with her usual intensity. Then she said, in a voice suddenly much smaller, Mommy would want us to be safe. Nathan's throat tightened. Even after 4 years, his daughter could ambush him with mentions of Sarah. She did it without meaning to, just stating facts as she understood them, connecting dots in the way children do, not realizing that some connections still drew blood. She would, he agreed, forcing the words past the constriction in his chest. She definitely would. Mia leaned across the center console and hugged him fiercely, her small arms surprisingly strong around his neck. He breathed in the smell of her shampoo, strawberries and something artificial and perfectly, wonderfully childish, and held on for an extra moment. Pick a good one, Daddy. I will. He watched her walk into the school, pink backpack bouncing against her small frame, stopping twice to wave at him before disappearing through the doors. He sat in the drop-off line longer than he should have, ignoring the impatient honk from the Lexus behind him, letting himself remember. Sarah had been gone for 4 years. The cancer had taken her in 8 months, from diagnosis to the end. 8 months that had restructured Nathan's entire understanding of time and priority and what mattered. He'd been running Cole Technologies then, his software company, working 80-hour weeks, missing Mia's first steps because he was in Singapore closing a deal. He remembered the phone call from Sarah's mother. He remembered the red-eye flight home, the longest 7 hours of his life. He remembered walking into that hospital room and seeing his wife, thin and pale, but still smiling, still joking about how he looked worse than she did. She'd made him promise, in that room, that he would be there for their daughter. Really there. Not checking emails during recitals, not taking calls during dinner, not letting work steal the moments that couldn't be recovered. "Promise me," she'd said, her hand cold in his. "Promise me she won't grow up with a stranger for a father." He'd promised. And 6 months after the funeral, after the grief had settled into something that could be carried rather than collapsed under, he'd sold Cole Technologies for $2.3 billion. He'd given most of it away: research foundations, children's hospitals, education programs. He'd kept enough to ensure that Mia would never worry about money, that her children and grandchildren would never worry about money. And then he'd done something that everyone in his life thought was absolutely insane. He'd taken a job as a maintenance worker at the Westfield apartment complex, $11 over minimum wage, 40 hours a week. The kind of job that let him drop Mia off every morning and pick her up every afternoon. The kind of job where nobody cared about stock options or quarterly reports or whether you'd been featured in Forbes. He'd moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Building C. He'd started shopping at regular grocery stores, eating at regular restaurants, living a regular life. And for the first time since he was 22 years old, he felt like himself. The Lexus behind him honked again, longer this time. Nathan put the Camry in drive and pulled out of the loop, heading toward Whitmore Avenue and the future. The Lexington Motors dealership announced itself from a quarter-mile away. Glass and chrome caught the midday sun and threw it back in blinding sheets, like the building was trying to prove something. It sprawled across a corner lot like it owned the entire neighborhood, which, Nathan suspected, it probably did. He parked the Camry at the far end of the customer lot, between a Mercedes SUV and a Tesla that probably cost more than some houses. The Camry looked apologetic beside them, hunched and faded, like it knew it didn't belong, but had nowhere else to go. Nathan stepped out and straightened his work polo. He'd come straight from an early shift at Westfield. Mrs. Patterson's garbage disposal had decided to commit suicide at 7 in the morning, making sounds like a dying robot, and he'd spent an hour coaxing it back to life. His khakis had a small grease stain near the pocket. His work boots were scuffed from years of crawling under sinks and climbing onto roofs. His hands still smelled faintly of WD-40. He looked exactly like what he was, a maintenance worker who fixed toilets and unclogged drains and changed light bulbs in hallways. He looked nothing like a man who could buy this entire dealership without checking his bank balance. Nathan walked across the lot, pushed through the glass doors, and stepped into a showroom that smelled like leather and money and the faint desperation of commission-based sales. The floor stretched before him, polished to a mirror shine so complete that he could see his own reflection walking toward him from below. Vehicles dotted the space like exhibits in a museum, each one positioned under strategic lighting that made the paint gleam and the chrome sparkle. A red sports car occupied a raised platform near the entrance, rotating slowly on a turntable, its price tag strategically hidden. Salespeople in expensive suits sat at glass desks along the perimeter, watching their screens, occasionally glancing up to assess incoming customers with the quick, practiced eye of people who had learned to calculate net worth from clothing and posture. One of them, a young man with too much gel in his hair and a suit that was slightly too tight, looked at Nathan. His eyes traveled from the work polo to the stained khakis to the scuffed boots. His expression shifted, almost imperceptibly, from potential interest to active dismissal. He returned his attention to his computer screen without a word. Nathan didn't mind. He was used to it. He walked deeper into the showroom, past a white convertible, past a silver sedan with leather seats the color of coffee, past a blue SUV that probably got 12 miles to the gallon and came with a monthly payment larger than most people's rent. He stopped in front of a black Lexington Monarch, the company's flagship SUV, all curves and power and quiet confidence. The kind of car that said its owner had nothing to prove. He ran his hand along the hood. The paint was so smooth it felt like touching still water. "Can I help you?" The voice came from behind him, sharp and professional, in a way that wasn't professional at all. It was the voice of someone who had already decided he wasn't worth her time, but was going through the motions, because that was what the employee handbook required. Nathan turned. The woman approaching him was perhaps 35, with auburn hair swept into a precise twist that had probably taken an hour to achieve, and would require another hour to dismantle. She wore a red dress that hugged her figure in ways that were designed to be noticed, and heels that clicked against the marble floor with each step, like a metronome counting down to something. Gold jewelry glinted at her wrists and throat, expensive pieces, the kind that weren't flashy but broadcast wealth to anyone who knew what to look for. A nameplate on her chest read, "Victoria Hayes, Sales Director." She stopped a few feet away from Nathan, close enough to seem attentive, far enough to maintain clear distance from his work clothes. Her smile was perfectly calibrated, professional, pleasant, and utterly insincere. "You look a little lost," she said, tilting her head slightly. "The service department is around back, through the side entrance." "I'm not here for service." Victoria's eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch, the only crack in her composure. "Oh? I'm interested in this one." Nathan gestured toward the black Monarch. For a long moment, Victoria simply stared at him. He could practically see the calculations running through her head, the mental spreadsheet updating in real time. Customer qualification, income assessment, probability of purchase, return on time investment. Her eyes traveled over his work polo, faded but clean, his khakis with the small grease stain near the pocket, his work boots scuffed from years of honest labor, the calluses on his hands visible even from a distance, the simple digital watch on his wrist, a $40 Timex he'd had for a decade. "The Monarch," Victoria said slowly, in the tone of someone explaining quantum physics to a particularly dim toddler. "That's our flagship vehicle. It starts at $98,000. "I know. With the premium package, which includes the safety features I'm sure you'd want for whoever you're shopping for, we're looking at closer to $120,000. "Okay." Victoria's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sir, I don't mean to be indelicate, but these vehicles require substantial financing approval before we can even discuss a test drive. The credit requirements are quite rigorous. Perhaps I could show you some of our certified pre-owned options." She gestured vaguely toward the back of the showroom. "We have some lovely vehicles that might be more accessible." Nathan looked at her for a long moment, letting the silence stretch. He'd dealt with people like Victoria Hayes his entire career, people who looked at surfaces and thought they saw depths, who confused appearance with substance, who treated respect as a resource to be allocated based on perceived value. He wasn't angry. He'd stopped being angry about this kind of thing years ago. The anger had burned itself out, replaced by something closer to curiosity. He found himself wondering, how far would she go? "I'm not interested in pre-owned," he said mildly. "I'm interested in this one. In black. For my daughter." "For your daughter." Victoria's smile had shifted into something closer to a smirk, the professional mask slipping to reveal the condescension beneath. "How sweet. But sir, as I explained, this is a significant purchase, not the kind of thing one does on impulse." "It's not impulse. I've been researching for 2 weeks. The safety ratings on this vehicle are excellent. The crash test results are among the best in the industry. The reliability data suggests it should last at least 15 years with proper maintenance. Something flickered in Victoria's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that a man in a work polo could string together coherent sentences about automotive specifications. But it passed quickly, replaced by a renewed certainty. 2 whole weeks, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. Well, that's certainly thorough. She glanced over her shoulder at 2 salesmen watching from their desks. One of them, the gel-haired one who had dismissed Nathan earlier, smirked openly. The other typed something on his phone, probably updating colleagues about the entertainment. Victoria turned back to Nathan, her patience visibly thinning. Look, I appreciate you stopping by. Really, I do. It's nice to dream. But I have actual clients scheduled this afternoon, people who are seriously prepared to make a purchase. So unless you can show me something that suggests you can actually afford this vehicle, I'm going to have to ask you to… Victoria. A voice cut across the showroom. Young, female, urgent. Victoria spun to find a woman in a dealership blazer hurrying toward them, face pale, phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Not now, Madison. I'm with a customer. I know, but I said not now. Madison stopped a few feet away, visibly torn between deference to her boss and whatever was on her phone screen. Her eyes kept darting from Victoria to Nathan and back again, wide with something that looked almost like fear. Victoria, I really think you should see this. See what? I'm in the middle of… I Googled him. Victoria let out an exasperated sigh. Why on earth would you… His name is Nathan Cole. The showroom seemed to go quiet. Even the soft background music seemed to fade into silence. Victoria stared at her assistant, not comprehending, the name clearly not registering. And… Nathan Cole. Madison's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. The Nathan Cole. Cole Technologies. The man who sold his company 4 years ago for $2.3 billion. Victoria didn't take the phone. She laughed instead, a bright, artificial sound that echoed off the marble floors and the glass walls, bouncing around the showroom like a trapped bird. That's ridiculous. Nathan Cole is a tech billionaire. He lives in mansions and flies on private jets. He's not… She gestured at Nathan's work polo, his khakis, his scuffed boots. This. Look him up yourself. Something in Madison's expression must have finally penetrated Victoria's certainty, some quality of absolute conviction that couldn't be faked. Victoria's smile faltered. She pulled out her own phone, typed with fingers that had begun to tremble slightly, and stared at the screen. Nathan watched her face as she read the search results. He watched the color drain from her cheeks like water running out of a sink. He watched her eyes widen, her lips part, her entire body go absolutely still. That's impossible, she whispered. Is it? Victoria looked up at him, back at her phone, back at him. The composure she'd worn like armor had crumbled completely, leaving something raw and panicked in its place. But you're wearing… A work polo, Nathan agreed, his voice perfectly calm. I'm a maintenance worker at an apartment complex. Have been for 3 years now. But you sold your company for… $2.3 billion. Yes. I gave most of it away. Research foundations, hospitals, schools. I kept enough. He shrugged, a small movement that somehow conveyed everything and nothing. I like fixing things. I like that the job lets me drop my daughter off at school every morning and pick her up every afternoon. I like that nobody treats me differently because of a number in a bank account. Victoria's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Mr. Cole, I am so incredibly sorry. I had absolutely no idea. If I had known who you were, I never would have treated me like I didn't matter." Nathan's voice remained mild, but something in his eyes made Victoria take an involuntary step backward. "That's exactly the point, isn't it? You didn't know who I was. You looked at my clothes and decided I wasn't worth your time." "That's not, I was just, what about the next person who walks in here wearing a work polo? The plumber who saved for 5 years to buy his wife something nice? The electrician who just got promoted and wants to treat himself? The teacher who inherited money from her grandmother? Are you going to treat them the same way you treated me?" Victoria's face had gone the color of paper. Behind her, the 2 salesmen who had been smirking earlier were now frozen at their desks, looking like they wanted the floor to open up and swallow them whole. "Mr. Cole," a new voice echoed across the showroom. Nathan turned to see an older man in an expensive suit practically jogging toward them. Gray hair, face cycling between red and purple. The desperate energy of someone who had just realized a catastrophe was unfolding in his domain. "I'm Gerald Harrington, the owner of this dealership. I cannot begin to apologize enough for this terrible misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Nathan said, turning to face him fully. "Your sales director understood perfectly. She saw a man in work clothes and decided he didn't deserve basic courtesy." "That's not a misunderstanding, Mr. Harrington. That's a choice. That's a policy." Harrington's face went from purple towards something approaching burgundy. "Victoria, what exactly—" "I can explain. I'm not interested in explanations." Nathan pulled out his phone. A simple iPhone, 2 generations old, screen slightly cracked from when Mia had dropped it in the driveway, and opened his banking app. "I came here to buy a car for my daughter. Something safe, something reliable, something that won't shudder when it shifts gears and make her afraid." He turned the screen toward them. "Is this enough for a test drive? Or would you like to make some more assumptions first?" Victoria stared at the screen. Her face went through a rapid sequence of expressions: shock, horror, disbelief, and something that might have been the beginning of nausea. The account balance displayed on the screen read $847,326,419.52. $847 million and change. Madison, still standing a few feet away, made a small sound. The gel-haired salesman dropped his phone. "I'll get the keys," Victoria whispered, her voice barely audible, and practically ran toward the back office. The test drive lasted nearly an hour. Nathan took the Monarch through the winding roads of the valley, pushing it through curves, testing the brakes, feeling how the suspension absorbed the imperfections in the asphalt. The car handled beautifully, smooth, powerful, confident in a way that had nothing to do with arrogance. Mia had appeared unexpectedly halfway through, her grandmother Helen bringing her when the school called about an early release for teacher training. Now she sat in her booster seat in the back, shrieking with delight every time Nathan took a curve slightly faster than was strictly responsible. "Daddy, do it again!" "Do what again?" "The zoomy thing. The zoomy thing might get Daddy a ticket." "What's a ticket?" "Something that makes your wallet much lighter." "Your wallet is already light. You only have like $20 in there." Nathan laughed. A real laugh, full and warm, the kind that came from somewhere deep in his chest. "You've been checking my wallet?" "I check everything. Grandma says I'm thorough." "Grandma is very diplomatic." He pulled the car over at a scenic overlook, putting it in park. The valley stretched below them, painted gold and orange by the late afternoon light. In the distance, he could see the glitter of the city, the mountains rising beyond it, the sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby girl." "Can we keep it?" Mia's voice was suddenly serious. "This car, I mean. Please. It's really, really nice. and it doesn't make scary sounds like our other car. We're going to keep it. Really? Really? But I need you to understand something first. Something important. Mia sat up straighter, sensing the shift in his tone. Even at 7, she knew when her father had something real to say. This car doesn't change who we are, Nathan said, turning to face her. We're still the same people who eat cereal together every morning. We're still the same people who read stories before bed and make pancakes on Sundays. Having a nice car doesn't make us better than anyone else. It just means we have a nice car. Mia nodded slowly, processing this with her characteristic intensity. Like how Tommy has a really nice car, but he's still mean sometimes. Exactly. What matters is how you treat people, not what you drive or what you wear or how much money you have. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. The lady at the dealership, Victoria, she forgot that. She treated me badly because she thought I was poor. But being poor isn't bad, Mia. Being poor is just a circumstance. Being unkind is a choice. Is she a bad person? Nathan considered this. The question deserved a real answer, not an easy one. I don't think she's bad. I think she made a mistake. I think she spent so long in a place where money is the only thing that matters that she forgot there are other ways to measure people, other ways to see them. Did you forgive her? I'm going to give her a chance to do better. That's not exactly forgiveness, but it's close. Sometimes that's all we can do, give people room to become better versions of themselves. Mia was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the valley below. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. Mommy would have been mad at her. Nathan smiled, though it hurt somewhere behind his ribs. Mommy would have been furious. Your mother had very strong feelings about people who treated others unfairly. I remember, she yelled at that man at the grocery store once. The one who was being rude to the cashier? Yeah, she made him apologize. Nathan laughed, the memory rising vivid and perfect. Sarah, 5'3", standing toe-to-toe with a man twice her size, demanding that he apologize to a teenage cashier who had made a minor mistake. The man had apologized. Everyone always apologized when Sarah decided they should. That was who she was, he said. She couldn't stand watching people be cruel when kindness was just as easy. She believed everyone deserved to be treated with dignity, no matter who they were or what they did for a living. Mia reached across the center console and put her small hand on his arm. The gesture was so adult, so Sarah, that Nathan had to blink hard. I think she would be proud of you, Daddy. You didn't yell at the lady, but you still taught her a lesson. Thank you, baby girl. You're welcome. She patted his arm, then sat back. Now can we do the zoomy thing again? Nathan laughed, put the car in gear, and pulled back onto the winding road. When they returned to the dealership, the atmosphere had transformed completely. Every salesperson stood at attention when Nathan walked through the door, their earlier smugness replaced by a desperate eagerness to be helpful. Victoria waited near the entrance, face pale, hands clasped in front of her like a penitent approaching confession. Mr. Cole, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not because of who you turned out to be, but because of how I treated you when I thought you were nobody. Nathan stopped in front of her. Mia's hand tightened in his. I was wrong, Victoria continued, meeting his eyes with what appeared to be genuine courage. I was cruel and dismissive, and everything I hate about this industry. I did it because it was easy, because I've done it 100 times before, because I forgot that the people I was dismissing were actual people with actual lives. Her voice cracked slightly. I saw the way your daughter looked at me when I was being rude to you. I saw myself through her eyes, and I didn't like what I saw. Nathan was quiet for a moment, considering. What are you going to do about it? Change. Actually change. Not just when I think someone important is watching, but all the time. Every customer who walks through those doors, regardless of how they look. She took a shaky breath. I know most people say that, and don't mean it. But I saw something today that I can't unsee. I don't want to be the person I was 3 hours ago. Mia tugged Nathan's hand. He looked down at her. She seems really sorry, Daddy, Mia whispered, loud enough for Victoria to hear. Her eyes are wet. Nathan crouched down to his daughter's level. What do you think? Should we give her another chance? Mia looked at Victoria for a long moment, assessing her with that uncanny perception that children have, the ability to see past masks and pretenses to whatever lay beneath. Then she nodded. Mommy said everyone deserves a second chance, but only one. Nathan smiled and stood. You heard her. 1 chance. Victoria nodded rapidly, wiping at her eyes. Thank you, both of you. I won't waste it. Good. Nathan pulled out his wallet. Now, I'd like to buy that car. The paperwork took over an hour. Nathan paid in full. Cash, no financing, no negotiation. He declined every extended warranty and add-on that Harrington personally tried to sell him, much to the owner's visible disappointment. He requested the cloth floor mats instead of the premium leather ones. Mia will destroy leather within a week, he explained. She's 7. 7-year-olds are basically destruction machines with pigtails and good intentions. Victoria laughed, a real laugh this time, surprised out of her, the first genuine sound she'd made all afternoon. I have a nephew that age. He once dismantled an entire couch looking for a quarter he'd lost. Did he find it? He found 3 quarters and a TV remote we'd been missing for 6 months. Nathan smiled. Maybe change really was possible. When the paperwork was complete, keys in hand, he turned to Mia. Ready to go home in our new car? Mia bounced on her toes, vibrating with barely contained excitement. Can I push the button that opens the back? You can push all the buttons. All of them? Within reason. What's reason? No pushing buttons while Daddy's driving. That's fair. Helen had agreed to take the old Camry back to their apartment. Nathan was donating it to a single mother's program that one of his foundations supported. The car had plenty of life left in it for someone who would appreciate it. As they walked through the parking lot toward the gleaming black Monarch, Mia slipped her hand into his. The afternoon sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Daddy. Yeah, baby girl? I'm glad we got a new car, but I'm more glad you were nice to the lady. Why's that? Because the car will get old someday, but the lesson she learned, she'll have that forever. Nathan stopped walking. He looked down at his daughter, 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, hair already escaping from the braid he'd made that morning, and felt his heart expand until it seemed to fill his entire chest. When did you get so wise? Mia shrugged, a perfect imitation of his own gesture. Grandma says I get it from Mommy. Grandma's right. They climbed into the new car, Nathan in the driver's seat, Mia secured in her booster seat in back. The leather smelled new, the engine hummed to life with quiet confidence, and the setting sun streamed through the windshield, painting everything gold. Daddy? Yeah? Can we still make pancakes on Sundays, even though we have a fancy car now? Nathan laughed. We can make pancakes every Sunday for the rest of our lives. Promise? Promise. He pulled out of the dealership lot and merged onto the main road. In the rearview mirror, the building receded into the distance, Victoria still visible through the glass, watching them go. Nathan hoped she would remember this day. He hoped she would remember how close she had come to being the worst version of herself, and how she had been given a chance to be better. Most of all, he hoped she would take that chance. Not everyone did, but sometimes people surprised you. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at Nathan's apartment. He opened it while Mia was at school, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. The handwriting was elegant, the stationery expensive. Dear Mr. Cole, I wanted to write to thank you, not for the sale, though of course we appreciate your business, but for what you taught me. After you left that day, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our conversation, kept seeing my own cruelty reflected in your daughter's eyes. I've worked in sales for 15 years, and somewhere along the way, I forgot why I started. I started because I loved helping people find what they needed. I forgot that everyone needs to be treated with dignity, not just the ones who look like they can afford the premium package. I've made changes, real ones. Every walk-in, regardless of how they look, gets the same greeting and the same attention. No assumptions, no judgment, just genuine help. Mr. Harrington was skeptical at first, but our customer satisfaction scores have already improved significantly. Last week, a young woman came in wearing hospital scrubs and driving a 15-year-old car with a dented bumper. Old me would have pointed her toward the used lot and moved on. Instead, I showed her the entire showroom. Turns out she's a pediatric nurse who just finished paying off her student loans. She'd been saving for 3 years for a safe, reliable car. She bought a Monarch in midnight blue, paid in full, just like you. She cried when she signed the papers. She said no one had ever treated her like she deserved something nice. She'd expected to be judged and dismissed, and when I didn't do that, she didn't know how to react. That sale felt different from any I've made before. Better. And I owe that feeling to you. Your daughter told me that everyone deserves one chance. I'm trying to make that chance count. With gratitude, Victoria Hayes, P.S. The scrubs the nurse was wearing had cartoon dinosaurs on them. She said the kids in her ward loved them. Some people wear their hearts on their sleeves. She wears hers on her scrubs. Nathan read the letter twice, slowly. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in his desk drawer, next to Sarah's wedding ring and the first dollar Cole Technologies ever earned. Some lessons took years to learn. Others landed in a single afternoon, in a showroom full of expensive cars and broken assumptions, in the moment when someone realized they didn't like who they had become. Nathan finished his coffee, washed the mug, and started preparing dinner. Mia would be home in 2 hours, full of stories about her day, ready to push every button in the new car, and then eat spaghetti, and then fall asleep during the 3rd chapter of whatever book they were reading. That was the good life. Not the car, not the money, not the number in the bank account, just the ordinary miracles happening every single day. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us that the world is full of hidden depths, that the maintenance worker might be a billionaire, that the nurse in cartoon scrubs might be a hero, that the quiet person you're about to dismiss might have a story that would change everything you thought you knew. We never know what someone is carrying. We never know what they've overcome or what they're working toward. All we can do is treat every person we meet with dignity, because they deserve it. Hit subscribe if you believe in second chances. Leave a comment telling me about a time someone surprised you. See you in the next one.